How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Code 5 gaming channel. Code 5 back with another tutorial, this time in Forza Horizon 5. With more and more gamers coming into the Forza Horizon franchise, I've had some of the people in my Discord asking about how do you tune cars, or how to tune cars really well, and there's a lot of different types of cars to be trying to tune. So today I want to drop into it and show you how to do a baseline tune for road racing cars. Now every single car is going to be different and you're going to be wanting to tweak it a little bit here and there for different things, but this is how to get it to baseline to where it's pretty well set and you can make your changes as you go, little tweaks here and there. So without further ado, let's get into it. The car we're checking out today is going to be the 2005 BMW M3. Alright, so we got back to our house and we're going to start the upgrade and tuning. Now do remember, I'm not going to be upgrading all the parts, only the parts that are going to allow me to tune everything on the car. First thing we're going to jump into is platform and handling. Your first purchase is going to be on your brakes. You want to make sure that you end up getting race brakes because that's how you unlock your brake tuning. On stock suspension, you can't do anything with it, so you have to make sure you get at least the race springs and dampeners to unlock the alignment and tuning. The next thing up is going to be for your anti-roll bars. Make sure to get front and rear anti-roll bars. As for the other two, the chassis reinforcement and your weight reduction aren't really needed, but if you want to make sure the car is a little bit sturdier, it's never a bad thing to go ahead and put a roll cage in it. It is going to up the weight of the vehicle, but it won't allow for the actual flex in a car during turns as much as it does without it. Next up, we're going to go to the drivetrain. We're going to go into our transmission. There are two types on here. The first type is a sport, which will unlock only your final drive ratio tuning. And you want to go for the race transmission to unlock the gear ratio tuning. The next thing we're going for is your differential. You're going to want to go ahead and get the unlock full differential tuning with the race differential. Next thing up is you're looking into tires and rims. It's really odd, but if you're going to change your tire compound and you don't want to bump your car up by too much, you're just going to want to go ahead and grab street tire compound if you're trying to get a little bit more grip. If you go above that, it just starts to take your car way up in class. The difference between the B class we just had and a set of street tires automatically bumps you up into A class. You can still, without any tire compounds, change the settings and PSI on your tires. Next up for preference, I normally don't change the front tires too much, but I will go to the rear tires and check and see if I can get a little bit more grip out of them by bumping it up probably about 2 sizes. If you're looking to save a little bit of weight as well, you can go in and look on getting a different set of rims. If you look, it'll tell you how much weight you'll drop, if any, when you get a different set of rims. Next up, if you're worried about handling, don't forget the wider your stance, the better you are at not flexing the car too much around turns. So I always go in and like to check and see if the spacing is going to help with my handling. Last but not least, we're going to check out the aerodynamics. Now, a lot of people don't like the way they look and they want to go for a nice fashionable looking bumper. However, if you go for the Forza ones, you can actually change up your downforce to assist with speed or cornering. It's not often that the rear is going to help you much, but if you like the look, go ahead and change it up. Later on, if you think the car doesn't quite have the give you want and you'd like an engine swap, you can always go here and swap your engines, your drivetrain. You can put a bigger aspiration in it for turbos, superchargers, and things like that. Alright, let's see how much this is going to cost me. So the vehicle itself was around $30,000 and now you're spending another 30,000 credits or so just to do your upgrades to be able to adjust, which isn't too bad. Once everything's purchased, we're going to go up to custom tuning. From here we're going to get into a lot of different things, so please bear with me, this video might be kind of long as we go through everything. The first thing I always start with my tires is I like to make sure that my front tire's PSI is higher than my rear tire. It allows for me to kind of get the oversteer that I want. And we're dealing with a rear wheel drive car here. These things are pretty much the same across front wheel, rear wheel, and all-wheel drive vehicles. The slight changes are a little different. We'll talk about them when we get to them. So the first thing we're going to go to, I like to run my PSIs. Front tires around 31, and my rear tires I drop down to somewhere between 27 and 28, depending on how it is. Now, the really weird thing is, in the game, they actually run your PSI based on the temperature. So the temperature outside actually affects the PSI, but that's getting into way advanced tuning. This is my normal setup, and if the car is going out in the front too much or the rear too much, I'll change these up. Normally the less PSI, the more grip you have, but do be sensible. Don't drop your PSI all the way down to the lowest marker and think it's going to really hold the car very well. The second thing we're going to do is get into the gearing of the car. So they have speed and acceleration, but you also don't want to take it too far one way or the other with a road racing car. I like to start my gearing out by making sure all my gears are actually just inside the box you see in the bottom right. I'll do some minor adjustments to make sure it kind of just fits there, and then later on I'll tweak it depending on how it's going. When you get down here into your actual gears, notice that if it seems like you need to catch a gear earlier for better acceleration, then you want to go ahead and lean it more towards the acceleration. Say off the start line, you're just spinning too much. One, go back and lower the PSI of your tires, then come back here and raise the acceleration a little bit if you're not getting off as you need, or if it just seems like you're spinning too much in it, make the gear a little bit longer. Now, as for your alignment, a lot of cars are really different. You want to deal with the negative and positive camber angles, and there is a way to do that. Now I'll go ahead and put a diagram up here for how these work. Your camber angle is set of how the tire, so coming into camber angle and the way that you're going to want to set this is where you actually have to go out and drive the car and use the telemetry itself to tell you whether or not you're setting the tires right. Alright, so once you're out on a road, go to a road you know pretty well. You want to be able to keep these pretty consistent and not too far off. As you see, we're coming into these turns, and you can look on my telemetry and it'll tell you exactly how much camber is going on during your turns, or if you're going to need to actually put more in. This does take a while, and it can be like a little time consuming, and it might kind of annoy you trying to do this, but you're trying to make sure your camber angle is set so that you're dealing with 0% on the side that you're turning into. We can see what we got. We're making a right hand turn, so we need to look on the left side to see how our camber angle's doing. As you can see, we're starting out with -2 camber angle, but as we're going around the corner, we're not quite hitting 0. Same on the left-hand turn. It's just not quite making it without enough force. So in order to tune from here, since we're already out on the road, just go to the Cars tab and tune car. We're going to come over to our alignment now and look at our camber. Our camber is at a -2, but we weren't quite getting to 0. Once you have your camber angle set and you're really hitting that 0 line, whether you had to go positive or negative for it, make sure to keep a check into it. Now your toe angles are going to be a little bit different to assist with different type of turns and things like that, and your front caster angles are going to change up a little bit as well. If you have to end up changing either of those for your setup, make sure you go back and retest your camber angles. Alright, now we're coming into your anti-roll bars. Anti-roll bars are going to, of course, assist without your car rolling over during turns and things. If you set it too stiff, you could have problems with the car, like just not making the turns too much. The car itself can't lean into the turn and come out of the turn very well. But if you make it too soft, you can end up with too much power and torque pushing the car into a huge oversteer and causing you to spin out. One of the first things that we're going to have to know is actually back when you're installing parts. Go to your upgrade shop and go to one of your parts. Now in the bottom, it's going to give you a toggle. When you toggle it, it'll actually tell you what your front and rear balance is, seen down by where your class is. This is important because we need to know this balance for the math. So now on the anti-roll bars, I'm going to take it all the way over to the stiff side and see what the number is. We have 65. Then you want to go all the way over to the left and find out what the soft side is, which is 1. You're going to take 65 and subtract it by 1. Once you have that, this car is set as a 50-50 balance from front and rear. So take the number you have, which for this would be 64, and multiply it by 50%, so 0.5. Now add back the difference from the lowest side of 1 and you come out with 33. So we want to make sure that our anti-roll bar stiffness is set around 33. The math for this car is going to be pretty easy since it sits at a 50-50, meaning our rear also needs to be set at a 33. When we get to springs, you want to look into the same thing. So the ride height, that all depends on kind of how you want it to look, but you can actually adjust your downforce by giving the rear a little bit more height than you do the front end. So now we're going to do the same thing with the springs for the front and rear. I'm going to go all the way over to the right, all the way to the maximum stiffness, and check the number, 1807.1. Now we're going to go all the way back to the left side on the softest setting and see what the number is. It's sitting at a 361.4. That gives me a total of 1445.7, and I'm going to multiply that by the 0.5 or 50%, which gives me 722.85. But I need to add back the most minimum side to that to get the right and proper number. My total comes out to 1084.25. Now sometimes your math is going to come out and it's not going to be perfect, like I have 1082.4 or 1082.9. I always go ahead and just round up to the closest one, and we'll call that a day. And we can move on to dampeners. Now this is going to be a rinse and repeat, so you're going to do the same process again. You're going to check the right to all the way on the left. You're going to take that number, multiply it by how your car is set up on a 50-50, 40-80, whatever your scenario is. You want to make sure your math is correct on it. I'm going to go ahead and knock these ones out real quick. So your rebound stiffness and bump stiffness are the springs and your suspension, and how well they deal with going over bumps or coming off of ledges and hitting the ground. All of these things are going to cause effects to your car that are of course just counter to the momentum going on, inertia, and all the laws of gravity and such. So testing these and seeing how well things go and then coming back and adjusting as you might need is always a good idea. Don't think that these numbers mean that's exactly what you're going to have. There's still minor adjustments that need to be made later. Now, when you're doing these, depending on what kind of racing you're doing, later on your aerodynamics can help with a lot of different things. This being set up as a car that's going to be doing road racing, you want to have good cornering, but make sure you're not maxing out the cornering too much. This can slow your speed down. On the left side, you're going to see your performance, and as you start testing things, make sure you're kind of checking and seeing that the car is still around where you want to be. But being road racing, you do want to deal with cornering. I think this one we're going to stick down. I think we'll go 380 on this one. I don't want it too much because I don't want the back end with so much downforce it's going to spin out. Now we get into braking. When you have a vehicle that's coming from rear wheel drive, you're going to want to kind of keep your brakes somewhat for the front, letting the nose kind of tuck in and help slow you down a little bit faster. If you're driving an all-wheel drive vehicle, keep it on a 50-50 balance. All the wheels have to be doing the same. If not, you can have massive under or oversteer if you start bending this. For me, I know I'm going to be dealing with a little bit more oversteer just because this is a rear wheel drive, so I'm actually going to put the bias out at 55% towards the front. As for braking force, 100% is always good, and you want high braking force because when you hit your brakes, you want it to stop you. Now, if you know that you're going to do the really long sprints and it has really long curves to it, you'll be perfectly fine with less brake pressure because you only need to slow down a little bit. So this, I'm going to go ahead and bump this up to 110, and we're going to call that a day. Now, when you have your differential going, you want to be able to make sure that you're going fast, and you want to be able to accelerate pretty quickly. There's not a lot of reason to have it too low at all. I always make sure it's at least up around 75 to 80%. Deceleration, I'm just bumping that up. If I want to stop, I want to stop.
It's not just about beating lap times, it's about sending a message. Nice work.
So with no major surprises, you can all see, if you can tune your cars really well, they can really make a big difference in a race. They don't have to be bulked up, you don't have to put all the best things in them. We did no engine upgrades on this, and I think the only thing we really majorly upgraded were to some sports tires. But putting everything on to be able to tune it and properly tune your car can make a big difference during a race. Thanks again for everybody who stopped by, I really appreciate it, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one.